Game started.
Patrick from Belgium. Okay, let's play e5 here. And let's see what we get in Ruy Lopez or Italian game. To Ruy Lopez. Well, I'll play my usual line here with bishop c4. So start out with the knight move. Attacking the pawn. White castles, not bothering to defend it. And the line I play is with b5 and bishop to c4, the Neo-Archangelsk. And I'll see what he does. Oh, it's a different responses. Yeah, c3 is the main one. I think you go d6 here. Need to really shore up this pawn because, well, the rook can come to the center here, put pressure. And you just drop the bishop back. The idea is to hold on to that pawn with the knight if he trades. Actually, okay, this is a line where you take with the knight. See if I can play this right this time. This is a line that's not supposed to be good for white, but sometimes the white players will play it.
Check.
Because it looks like it wins a pawn. But in fact, the e-pawn is still hanging. And so black gets the pawn back. And turns out to be an okay position. So this is one of the reasons why this defense works. So you can trade it off here. And then attack it. Attack the e-pawn has now become a d-pawn. And black has the bishop pair. So black gets the pawn back. If the rook moves, you have bishop takes f7. So the rook is tied down at the moment, defending f7. None of white's pieces are developed. He could play bishop to g5 check, but he didn't bother, so he's just going that way. Well, he's defending that pawn. So let's think about it. I take, he takes. I take the rook. I have to take the rook. If I just, yeah, my rook is hanging. And also if I just grab the pawn, he can pin it. So I take, he takes. I take the rook, he takes. Then I take the pawn. And it's a bishop versus knight in the end game. And the material is even.
Check.
And black is a little better developed. So that's the idea of this. Well, that's one of the ideas of this opening. So what do I do here? Is there anything hanging at the moment? This is defended, that's defended. I need to get my rook into the game. He can push his pawn forward with the knight. I can push my pawn forward and try and keep his knight kind of boxed in there. But that would also block in my bishop. There's a check here, but his knight is covering that square. So let's just get the king off the back rank and bring the rook into the game. And notice the pawn structure is completely symmetric. Let's see how he's going to, what he's going to do about his g-pawn there. That drives his king back to g1 if he doesn't want to give up the pawn. Yeah. And now my bishop is loose, so he can move his knight with tempo. Knight here, here, here. All four knight moves are in places where I can take it. This pawn is not hanging because if I take it, he can push. Does that work? I take here, he pushes, I push. He brings the rook over to attack my bishop. I push again, but I'm one step too late. If he moves the knight, I can actually take that pawn. So let's prepare an escape for the bishop. So I'm really threatening to take there, I think. I take, he pushes, I push. He attacks my bishop, I can take here. And let's see, if he just defends the pawn or moves it, then I'm going to lift my rook and go after his g-pawn. Rook f6 to g6, something like that. The bishop dominates his knight at the moment, but he could, yeah, so he decided to defend it. Let's see, do I want to try and create some weaknesses here by pushing on with h5? I mean a5, a4. a4 keeps his knight tied down defending, and if he pushes, then this is loose. So a4, he probably will take, or just leave it and move his knight somewhere. Do I have something better? If he pushes here, I can have to drop my bishop back, I guess. Let's lift the rook. I couldn't see anything definitive there. So he did want to take, I mean push rather. Okay, so we're going to go for this end game. If I don't take his knight, then he's got the better pawn structure here, so it kind of forces this. And now, yes, it's an end game where everything is very symmetrical. Let's see, so I can get the first attack in on a pawn. And that's pretty clever. So I take, he takes with check. I go here and he takes that pawn. And then, let's see, I can come here. I wonder if pushing a pawn is an idea. If I push this pawn, he can check and take the pawn, and then that defends this pawn. If I push this pawn, takes here, yeah, I should push this pawn.
Check.
You can take there with check. And then I can go here to attack his pawn. And yeah, he can drop back and defend, but I'll activate my king here. I think this should be okay for me as well. He can bring his rook down to the second rank here. Go after these pawns on the side, but that would give up this pawn, and I would get a passed pawn. So I'm going for that line. So it's 3 against 4, and I have a passer and he has a passer.
Check.
And that drives me back. I want to hold on to this outside pawn here. And let's attack attack his pawn here. And start pushing my pawn forward. So, yeah, he seems to have recovered from that pretty nicely. Let's bring the rook over here first. Before pushing, he has this. I didn't have a check, actually. Did not have a check. Worried a little bit about his check along this file, but he can't go there because of the pawn. So he's just going to... okay, we can trade pawns like this, I guess. He takes, I take with check. His king comes here to defend his pawn. I can even go here and take another pawn over here. So I guess he has to come forward and defend his pawn, but then my pawn is not hanging anymore. So I'm expecting king d4, and then what do I play? I could push the pawn. He takes, I take with check and take there. So he defends, not with the king, but with the rook. Interesting. Okay, I was wondering if I could get my pawn all the way forward to g3 and play, yeah, he's not going to allow that. I wanted to be able to cover this square. So I wanted the king to go forward to g4 rather, and rook to e4, and that would prevent his king from coming forward. So he's going to allow that.
Check.
Yeah, this is no good. This is not working for me. He can take the pawn, I can take the pawn, he can take the pawn, I can take the pawn. He gets 2 here and I have 1 here. And that's probably a race that he will win. Check.
Check.
Take. So... yeah, and my king is screened out of the game. I wonder if there's any other tricks. Probably all the way back here. My idea is to, if he pushes this pawn forward, I'm going to bring my rook over here to the this file. So that's the idea, is to give this pawn at the last moment and get my king over in position to stop these pawns. And particularly if I can just win one of them, then we can get into a drawish endgame that way. Okay, I have to push once more. Go here. He has to take, and then I can take this pawn. Okay. So this should be a draw. Let's see if I can hold it. Yeah, king in front of the pawn on the third rank or better. And this is all good. All good for black. I mean, it's a draw. It's not like black is winning, but sometimes that's all you can do. Let's see if I can hold this. Still, he has tricks to play. There's always tricks in these rook and pawn endgames, but it should be a draw. So he's probably calculating. So rook takes, king over. I put my king here in opposition.
Check.
He can move his pawn forward. Let's just go here. Just get my king right in front of the pawn. It's like the ideal setup. Yeah, so anyway, that wasn't working. So now you put the rook over to the side and you harass the king from the side as much as possible. And then if you are forced back to the third rank, which happens, then your rook drops and then you harass the king from behind. But in any case, it's a draw. And I think with checks here, I should be able to draw even before he makes any more progress. So yeah, he's searching for that winning idea, any kind of idea, but should not be there. Yeah, so he goes for the check.
Check.
I mean, he goes for the king forward, driving the king forward. So I can step forward here. What can he do to stop the checks, though? If I just keep checking, he can never block my checks. He can come around behind.
Check.
Yeah, let's just go for perpetual checks.
Check. 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 Check.
And that's the draw. So
Check.
anyway, I'm glad I was able to demonstrate a draw on rook and pawn endgame. So he's going to test my knowledge of king and pawn endgames now.
Check.
But he's not messing around too much, so I don't begrudge him this. Let's see. Yeah, whenever you can't stay in front of the pawn, you drop straight back. Whenever the king comes forward, whenever you can go in front of the pawn, you go in front of the pawn. Yeah, so now he's just messing around. Whenever the king comes forward, you put your king in front of his king.
Check.
It's a draw. Drop straight back. Come forward when you can. Drop straight back. Block the king. Come forward. Drop straight back. That's a draw.
Draw. Drawn.
Yeah, that was a draw by repetition. So anyway, there's just no way that White can make progress there. He can force a stalemate, but that's it. Anyway, I thought that was an interesting game. I'm going to upload this. It's maybe disappointing that it ended in a draw, but that is, in fact, a successful defense. Sometimes a draw is all you can get. Okay, and I will do my usual postmortem. See you then.